Oleg was sitting in his office, checking company reports. The man held a very high position and was no less than an oil magnate. Now that he was in his 60s, he was confidently. He was running a huge business, solving serious problems and difficulties. But once upon a time, everything started from scratch. He had traveled all over the country with geologists, had spent many years on drilling rigs. He was looking around, mastering new ways of drilling hard rock, and finally, according to his own calculations, discovered his own oil well. It was a huge risk, but as it turned out, not for nothing. The man got rich as if by magic. While he was engaged in the oil business, which took a lot of energy and time, his own family was guided by his faithful wife, Alla. She could be relied upon for everything, for she was a woman. She was decisive, commanding, and intelligent. Son Alexander was a late child, for it had taken half his life to achieve prosperity and serious weight in society. The lad grew up practically without his father, for he was round the clock, and his mother was in charge of everything in the house. The son did well in school, graduated from university, and also followed in his father's footsteps. And started helping him in business. He often went on business trips, met with business partners, and ran branches. But his personal life did not work out so well. He fell deeply in love with one girl, but it didn't work out. The mother insisted on a profitable marriage with the judge's daughter, Olga, but it turned out that she was childless and a promiscuous to boot. Then Alexander decided to take a child from the orphanage and adopted the baby. The girl was 2 years old, not an infant. My son's wife supported the idea at first, but when it came to diapers and night sleep deprivation, she realized she didn't want kids at all. Adopted daughter just annoyed her, demanded a lot of attention and care. The negligent mother soon got tired of it all, and soon betrayed the family without any remorse by running away abroad with her lover. Alexander suffered greatly, but the baby girl was not abandoned, not sent back to the orphanage, hired a nurse, and brought up the little Nadia. And a year ago, and the son tragically died. Alexander went to business negotiations with a large sum of money, and that was it. They found only a completely burned-out car and a charred body. It is impossible to describe the grief from the loss of my only son and heir. They did not want to live at all, but they could not lose heart since they now had little Nadia on their hands. After his son's death, Oleg and his wife began to bring up their granddaughter by themselves. 5-year Nadia was an outlet tycoon. He adored her, and didn't dote on her. The businessman's wife also shook like a bird over the rosy-cheeked, chubby princess and demanded from the nurse to strictly observe all the rules of upbringing, especially when she hugged them tightly and whispered, "Daddy, Grandma, I love you so much." The girl remembered her father, loved him dearly, and often asked where he was and when he would come home, because Alexander often went on business trips. But the spouses never dared to tell her the awful. The wife and her husband never dared to tell her the awful truth in order not to traumatize the child's psyche. From surging memories of the businessman brought a phone call. On the other end of the phone excitedly rambled elderly nurse. "Nadiusha, Irina Borisovna. Oleg, we have here an emergency. I was walking with Nadiusha. She was sledding with the kids from the mountain. Was sledding, but they went the wrong way, and the little girl almost fell into the river. I am clumsy. I cannot keep up with her. Thank God, a quick-looking kid was nearby. He sells old books on the quay. He didn't look pretty. He looked like a homeless kid. So he saved her, literally by the scruff of the neck pulled. I'm so sorry. But don't worry. The girl is fine now. We're home. Changed her clothes. I gave her a foot bath just in case." Just in case. The businessman jumped out of his chair and shouted angrily, "I'll be right there. Why are you so? This is pure negligence. And if it were not for this brave boy, what then?" The man rushed home, burst into the room, and hugged and hugged his granddaughter. "Nadia, granddaughter, are you all right? Why don't you listen to your nanny?" The frightened little girl yelled. "It's okay, Grandpa. Don't scream, please. I won't do it again. I was rescued by Michael, one boy. He also gave me a book so I wouldn't cry, as a memento. So beautiful and interesting. There are such fairy tales in there. Even my nanny doesn't know them. And my grandmother probably doesn't either." The businessman asked, "There's a good boy, Bear, a brave boy. And show me, what's the little book?" The little girl handed him a beautiful old book of fairy tales in a leather cover. He opened the first page, read something there, and froze. Then changed his face. He broke into a cold sweat and began to ask the nanny, "Irina, how does this Michael and where to find him?" "I want to thank him," the woman replied. "He's on the waterfront every day, stands there, selling old books. Such a skinny, blond boy. He has a distinctive mole on his cheek. You'll know him as soon as you see him. Dressed poorly and untidily. Don't scold me too much. I know it's my own fault. Most importantly, don't tell Alla Sergeyevna, or she'll kick me out in a jiffy. Too much of a temper with her." Oleg smiled. "Yes, with my wife. You cannot play around." "Okay, agreed. I will not say anything. But Nadiusha must be warned. She's like a partisan, knows how to keep secrets. And you, please, keep a better eye on my weasel. That such a thing will not happen again." The businessman spent the whole night without sleep, thinking and remembering, and quietly drinking cognac in the kitchen, and could not find his place. He could hardly wait for the next morning, and rushed to the office, not to work at all. He went straight to the quay, spun around, looked around, but did not see anyone who looked like the boy. Then he asked the street vendors, "I need a boy, Michael. He sells interesting old books here. Something I do not see him." They briskly replied, "Yes, he's not here today, he's gone. But he's selling almost every day, so you'll see. So you'll see him again." Oh, poor boy. Such grief. The businessman went to the waterfront every day, but the boy was still missing. He found him on the fourth day. Michael was small and puny, and it was freezing outside. Frost was outside, and he was dressed in a light, worn demi-season jacket and summer sneakers on thin soles. All the time he was shifting from foot to foot and warming his stiff fingers in his pockets. The businessman came over, began to look at the unique, expensive books. Asked, "Hello, your name is Michael. How much do you sell books, and where are they from?" A secret. The frightened boy shrank at the sight of such a respectable man and answered quietly, "Yes, I'm Michael. Take the tales, they are very interesting. Only 250 rubles. Don't think, they are not stolen, just my mother collected them all her life. She worked as a librarian, and now she's really sick, so I'm selling them so I can save up for an operation, and to buy something to eat at home." Oleg's heart sank and went in his heels. Despite the cold, he threw himself into a fever. Exactly. It's her. There are no such coincidences. He continued the conversation. "Let me buy them all from you, in bulk. You just recently saved my granddaughter. Didn't let her fall into the river. Her name is Nadia. Thank you, you brave boy. Will you invite me to visit? Maybe I'll buy some more books from you. I collect them too. At the same time, acquaint me with my mother. Maybe I'll help what?" The joyful little boy carefully counted and carefully shoved the money he received into a small purse, then said, "Sure, let's go. But wait for me here for a while. I'll quickly run to the store, buy milk and rice, porridge for me and my mother too. And some bread, okay? Because I haven't eaten anything since this morning." The businessman nodded that he should go, but he stood there like a man with old books in his hands, remembering the past, swallowing his tears. His son Alexander was always very capricious, and in spite of his very authoritarian mother, who was trying to lead everything, He often defied her in his decisions. He thought he had his own opinion and didn't have to go. And he didn't have to go along with anybody. It so happened that in his youth his son fell madly in love with an ordinary girl, a librarian from a poor family, Tamara. They met entirely by chance in a cafe, and Tamara so fell in love with Alexander that he could not be without her. A day without her. Oleg remembered how rapturously his son spoke about her. "Dad, you know, she is not. Daddy, you know, she is not like all these rich fools. Tamara clever and well-read, and she is so beautiful. Thus almost doesn't make up. She doesn't need it. And hair, what satiny long plaits at her. I haven't seen such at anybody else. I've never seen. She is so interesting to me, easy and good. I even think about her all night long. Can I invite her to visit? You will like her for sure." That was Alexander's biggest mistake. Her mother immediately became furious with the girl as soon as she found out that she was from a poor and unpromising family. The rest of the evening was uneventful, with the hostess asking Tamara uncomfortable and even obscene questions, and she made it very clear that she was not welcome here. She had a stereotype, imposed by secular life, that they now belonged to the high society and therefore should marry a girl from a wealthy family. Their level, so that he would not be ashamed to be seen with her in the local beau monde. Tamara was upset and ran home in tears. Alexander took offense at his parents for such a warm welcome for his bride and went to calm her down. The whole situation was extremely unpleasant for the businessman, and he tried to talk to his wife, but it was all in vain. She kept repeating the same thing. "I did not raise my son to marry the daughter of an alcoholic. It's not going to happen. I'll lay down my bones, but I'll destroy this stupid union. My son will thank me later." So Alla tore and tore, trying to convince her son. "Alexander, do not be stupid. Come to your senses. Why do you need this beggar girl? Who are her parents? Why do we need such a kinship? She's a beautiful girl, no doubt about it. I understand. She's young. You've had your fun, and that's enough. Stop this childishness and pay attention to normal girls. You're a businessman after all." The son was indignant. "And Tamara is not normal. Why is that? She is well-read, knows English fluently, does not drink. She doesn't smoke. She's very well-mannered. What's wrong with that? You can't choose your parents. Is it her fault they drink? And the fact that we love each other, is that not an argument at all? So the dumb Larissa, for example, is the daughter of a businessman who drinks whiskey and looks like a 30-year-old woman. She's worthy of high society, but my Tamara is not. Is that how it works? Well, no. You have your opinion, I have mine. And I will marry the one I love, not the one whom you're trying to impose on me." Such scandals were becoming more and more frequent, but Alexander continued to meet Tamara, and was even going to leave his parents and rent a house with her. Oleg himself was not against Tamara. He even liked his potential daughter-in-law. He could see that she was simple and modest. He couldn't stand those stuck-up, slapstick young ladies who thought they were God knows what. After all, he himself had spent half his life on the oil rigs with ordinary men, and he liked hard-working and unassuming people. Many of them had achieved a lot, and status had nothing to do with it. But his wife could not explain it. She got it into her head that it was necessary to separate Sasha and Tamara. And that was it, even if you tear. Oleg preferred not to get involved in family quarrels, and there was no time, so to speak. He was, so to speak, a neutral party in the matter. Alexander, in spite of his mother's exhortations, continued to meet. He asked his father to help him get one very rare book, Nenet's Fairy Tales. Tamara was a librarian and collected books. It was her hobby. So 3 days ago, a little boy from the boardwalk gave Nadyosha this very book. There could be no doubt, because on the first page was the inscription, "To my beloved Tamara for a long memory." Why Alexander broke up with Tamara, Oleg did not really know. Whether it was jealousy or stupidity, But it happened so suddenly and unexpectedly. The son was very distressed, withdrawn, and for a long time could not get anyone with anyone else for a long time. Little by little, the son came to his senses. His mother persuaded him to marry the judge's daughter, Olga, who was unloved. That's where the cunning madam was. She loved only herself and spent her days in beauty salons and fashionable glamorous parties, and after the appearance of Nadyusha, ran away with a lover in Europe. So there you have it. A girl from high society disgraced them in the white light. After her son's death, Alla gave up a lot. 100 times she blamed herself for being against her son's marriage to Tamara and actually broke Alexander's fate. She often cried on his grave and begged forgiveness, but she immediately accepted Nadia and loved her as her own. Since then, the elderly woman began to look at many things in life differently, but her son was no longer to return. Michael shouted, "I am already back." "Well, uncle, shall we go and visit? It's cold to stand here. It's freezing today." They got into the car, and the baby began to show the way. They did not go far, but all through some nooks and crannies. When Oleg entered an old hostel, he almost collapsed. The smell of fried fish, tobacco, damp, and something else very disgusting. There were children scurrying through the halls, women hanging their laundry on the ropes in the corridor, talking loudly, and from a corner some drunkard was crawling on all fours to meet them, all in all darkness. The businessman had already forgotten that people live like this. The boy opened the shabby door with the key, and they entered into the room. It was very clean, poor though it was, with violets blooming on the windowsills and a beautiful embroidered handmade tablecloth on the table. On the couch, under a blanket, lay a thin, almost transparent, sickly woman, and was reading a book. When she heard the footsteps, she exclaimed joyfully, "Michael, my son, are you back already? How cold is it?" Then she looked at Oleg and suddenly stopped herself. The businessman recognized her by her eyes. They remained the same, beautiful, bottomless, and inexpressibly sad. Oleg even shed a tear and rushed to her. Tamara, it's me, Oleg, Alexander's father. Do you remember me? What's wrong with you? How are you? My God, it's been so long." The woman, seeing the glossy, well-dressed businessman, she recognized him, of course. She changed her face and turned pale. She felt very uncomfortable that he saw her so feeble, and she and her son lived like church mice. "Hello, Oleg, of course I remember. The whole 9 years have passed. That's how old Michael is now. How is Alexander? Alive and well? He must have got married. I hope that still found a daughter-in-law from high society." The businessman turned sullen. "Alexander died tragically a year ago. He went on a business train, and I never saw him alive again. The car was found completely burnt out, and the body was so charred that I only recognize his belt buckle and ring. Now we are bringing up our granddaughter, Nadyusha. My son adopted her shortly before he died, took her from an orphanage. He wanted children very much. He was raving about them. And my wife, Olga, couldn't or didn't want to give birth. I don't know. And then she went abroad with her lover. That's the way it is. Tamara, why did you and Alexander break up? I never understood, to tell you the truth. My son suffered for a long time. He couldn't forget you. Tell me, Michael, is he my grandson? As soon as I saw him, for some reason I knew it at once. The same birthmark as Alexander's, on his cheek." Tamara sighed, wiped away a tear, and said, "Why we broke up, I do not want to say, is still very. I don't want to tell you why we broke up. It still hurts very much. Ask your wife. She's the one who did it. I didn't know about Sasha. I'm sorry, really. I secretly hoped that maybe God would give, and we would meet again. I loved him very much, and I still love him. Still do. I could never tie my life to anyone else. And Michael is his son, it's true. I realized I was pregnant after we broke up. I cried and suffered for a long time. I thought whether to tell him or not. I was scared. There was no one to help me. But my pride kicked in and I decided that since your son didn't need me, neither did your child. So I'm dragging him all by myself. It's very hard. I can't deny it. Especially now that I'm sick. My poor son is worried about me. He's running around selling my collection of books, at least to get a piece of bread. To earn at least a piece of bread. And I can't even buy him winter boots. Poor thing, still in sneakers. Oleg asked, "What, are you sick?" "Maybe I can help." "Something serious?" Tamara sadly replied, "It is a very rare genetic disease. Your knee joint is gradually breaking down. You need a very expensive operation to replace it, and then you can live a normal life. But I will never get that kind of money. So I'm suffering. I can't even stand up anymore. My leg is swollen, and I can't bend it. I can hardly go to the toilet. I can't even think what will happen next. I'm worried about my son, who he will stay with." And she quietly cried from hopelessness. The man emotionally took Tamara's hand. It was cold and lifeless. "Tamara, do not worry. I'll start today to look for a clinic that deals with such cases. I need all your examinations, tests, and hospital records. You will walk and live normally, I promise. And don't worry about Misha. I'll take him with me while you're being treated. You are not strangers. I will not leave you. Here, take the money for the first time, and I'll take care of everything. Wait for me. I won't be long." Tamara started crying. "Why do you bother with me? You hated me. You were against my relationship with Alexander. Against our relationship. What do you care if I die or live? Or is this another conspiracy? I wouldn't be surprised at anything." The businessman became terribly ashamed, and he looked down. "Forgive us, Tamara. After Alexander's death, we regretted 100 times that we didn't let you two to meet. He never fell in love with anyone else but you. His whole life went wrong. So I want to make amends, even if it's too late. I want to make amends for my sins. You're a very good woman. We've ruined your life too, haven't we? Cheer up. You'll be all right." Then Michael came into the room, carrying on a tray of steaming porridge from the common kitchen and croutons. He sat down beside his mother's bed and put the food on a chair. "Mommy, I made porridge for you and fried toast. Aunt Luba showed me in the kitchen how to do it. Let me help you sit down. I need to eat. Taste it. It's delicious. I ate a whole plate myself." Oleg even shed a tear. It's crazy. A 9-year-old child takes care of his mother, no worse than an experienced nurse. He helped the boy sit Tamara down, and she ate. Then hugged Misha and whispered, "Thank you, my son. You are my kind and good boy. What would I do without you? I would have done without you." The boy glowed and busily went to wash the dishes. Oleg was eager to hold the boy close to him. "Grandson, my dear grandson." Everything inside was jubilant and singing, but he didn't know how to do it, especially without Tamara's permission. A thought flashed through his mind, which made everything inside feel cold. What if she wouldn't allow us to talk to her, and she would? And tell the kid what happened. I have to talk to Tamara, but later. The businessman arrived at the office. The first thing he did was call his deputy and instructed him to look for a good. He called his deputy first thing in the office and told him to look for a good clinic. He was determined to find out the truth from. He decided to find out the truth about his wife and find out what she had done, because he knew for sure that the breakup between Alexander and Tamara was her doing. He already knew for sure. Alla was just bustling in the kitchen and was glad to see her husband. "Hi, Oleshek. You decided to come home early today. Nice to meet you. Wash your hands and come to the table. I cooked pike perch in sauce and salad with avocado. Our nurse Irina Borisovna told me a new recipe. It should be very tasty." The businessman frowned and pushed back the dish and immediately began. Allah, answer me straight. Why did Alexander and Tamara break up years ago? I know you did it. I only want the truth. The woman made round eyes. What's with the tone? And why these inappropriate questions? My son is dead. He's gone. You know it's a painful subject for me. I'm not going to say anything. Why bring up the past? But the husband was not going to retreat and went on the attack again. Answer me immediately. I'm not in the mood for jokes. I found Tamara. Do you even know that she's been alone all these years, raising our own grandson all these years? Not only that, but she's very sick and needs an operation. And whose fault do you think it is? Do you have any idea what we've done? We ruined my son's life. He was dreaming of having children, and he has a son. He looks just like Alexander. He even has the same mole on his cheek. A wonderful, wonderful boy. If you had seen how selflessly he takes care of his sick mother, and that at 9 years old. I want to know the truth, why and how Alexander and Tamara broke up. Allah suddenly fell silent and blushed. She was terribly ashamed and unpleasant to remember everything, but she understood from her husband's tone that it made no sense to deny it. Yes, I broke them up. I asked an acquaintance who made a photomontage, attached Tamara's face to the naked young lady's body, and next to her, another guy was lying beside her. And then I slipped these photos to Sasha with a note saying, "Look, cuckold, what your fiancé is doing." That's all. From that point on, they fought all by themselves. Alexander was wildly jealous and furious, and Tamara was very, very proud and mortally offended. And so they parted. Oleg could no longer hold back and shouted in a way that made the veins on the neck swelled with anger. Allah, why? Answer me. Are you relieved that Alexander broke his life? Didn't he love anyone else but that girl? You should have lived well, raised your son. What have you done? And I was a fool. I did not pay attention. I let it go on its own. Allah suddenly burst into tears, so sincerely and bitterly. Don't shout at me. I do not know why. At that time, it seemed to me that I was doing everything right. How could I be related to no one? It was later, much later, when I saw how suffering, and how he was suffering with the unloved Olga, I began to understand what I had done. Forgive me, please. What should I do now? Go hang myself? The husband thought out. He couldn't see the women's tears and embraced. He hugged his wife. All right, you can't take it back. Both are good, what can I say? But we can correct our mistakes. I have already instructed my deputy to look for a clinic for Tamara, so she can have a surgery on her knee joint. You should see her leg. It's swollen and doesn't move. Tamara can barely stand up. She's totally disabled. And she is a young and beautiful woman. She worries a lot about her son, and Mikhail will stay with us for a while. I hope you do not mind your own grandson. Allah wiped away her tears and mouthed, No, of course. Not. I mean, I adore Nadia, and our grandson will love, and with Tamara, I'll reconcile, ask her forgiveness, I promise. At the noise of the noise, Nadia ran out of the nursery and rushed to hug grandfather. Hello, Grandpa. And what? We will live with someone. I heard. And why are you here fighting? Oleg laughed and gently poked his granddaughter on the nose. And who here is so nosy and eavesdrops on adult conversations? Yes, we will live with the same boy, Michael, while his mother will be treated. Turns out he's no stranger to us. He's my grandson, too. Can you imagine? That's how it happens. You don't mind, do you? Will you share your toys with him? Nadia clapped her hands and was very happy. Hooray! Michael is good. He saved me. And kind. And when will he arrive? I'll go make him a present, too. I'll draw a picture. Allah raised an eyebrow in surprise. I don't understand. How does Nadia know Misha? What did he save her from? Don't I know something? The businessman smiled slyly. It was our little secret, but the blabbermouth granddaughter couldn't keep it. I'll tell you, but promise you won't scold the nanny. The other day they were out for a walk, sledding down the embankment. Nadia's sled went the wrong way, and she almost fell into the river. Irina Borisovna, of course, rushed after her, but how could she have had time? And Mikhail was just there selling books, and he ran up and saved our granddaughter in time, and even gave her something as a memento. I'll show you now. The man pulled out the same storybook. That's right. I helped Sasha and ordered it for Tamara through a bribe. That's how I knew he was my grandson. And then he took me to my mother. You should see how Tamara is suffering right now. She's so thin. She's so transparent. We must help her. Do you understand? Allah answered quietly. God. Oleg. Of course, let's help. Go right now and take them. I do not mind. In a couple of days, they found an excellent clinic for Tamara and operated, and Misha's grandparents took him in. At first, the boy was shy and timid. He had never been in such a fancy mansion. But cheerful Nadia helped him get used to it quickly, and the boy treated her like a little sister, encouraged her, and made sure that nothing would happen to her. Allah often looked at the boy and wept softly. He was so much like Sasha. She even pulled out baby pictures of her son, just a copy. The same serious look from under his eyebrows, and a mole on his cheek. She was so ashamed of her terrible act. Her conscience was burning inside her like a burning iron. She was cursing herself. It could have been so different. Different. Why had I torn them apart? It was as if I had been possessed. And I can't bring my son back, and I can't ask for forgiveness. Fortunately, the operation was successful. The knee joint was replaced. There was a long rehabilitation period ahead of her. Tamara was visited often by the whole family. Michael and Nadia drew pictures of them all together, holding hands. Grandpa, Grandma, children, Mom, and Dad. Dad was always present in each of the drawings. Adults didn't scold Nadiusha for it. They understood that the girl just missed him a lot. Well, and Misha just wanted very much that he had a father too. When they first came to Tamara's room, at first everyone was talking about her health, discussing what the doctor was predicting. The doctor predicted Mikhail was hugging and stroking his mother, treating her with mandarins. He missed her so much. And then Allah asked, "My dears, leave me and Tamara alone. I need to tell her something very important. Buy me a coffee in the meantime, if it's not too much trouble." Oleg understood everything at once and took the kids away without a word, promising to buy them delicious cakes, and Allah sighed, looked the unsuccessful sister-in-law in the eyes, gathered her courage and said, "Tamara, I repent. I'm very sorry to you. And there's no excuse. It was me who set up those unfortunate pictures. I thought it would be better, as if the devil inside me. When Alexander died, I regretted it many times. He loved you so much. He couldn't make a family with anyone else. Forgive me if you can. I know you can't bring anything back, and you can't raise Sasha from the grave. But now that we know we have such a wonderful grandson, Michael, let's forget all the hard feelings. When you get better, come stay with us and live with us. The mansion is huge. There's enough room for everyone. I promise I will never hurt you again." Tamara didn't try to be sly and answered honestly, "You know, Allah, I won't hide it." I realized at once whose hands those photos were made by. For many years after that I hated you. I could not understand why and for what you ruined our relationship. I often thought about it, and then I looked at it all from a different angle. Alexander and I had a lot of faults ourselves. We both got angry and stubborn, like two sheep. We both asserted our rights instead of sitting down, talking calmly, and sorting things out. Apparently, he didn't trust me 100% since he believed that stupid picture, and I was too proud. And resentful. I found out about the pregnancy almost immediately after we broke up because I could have called to tell him, but no, I decided. I didn't want to impose. I will raise myself. I secretly hoped that maybe he would come to his senses and come back to me. In general, both are good. It turned out as it turned out. To be honest, I'm really tired of being alone over the years. It is hard to raise a child alone. And I am very glad and grateful to your husband that he found me and helped me. I will gladly accept your offer. Dibs on the contract. No more innuendo. It is better to discuss everything at once. All right. The women embraced warmly, and both were relieved, as if a heavy burden of resentment and misunderstanding, accumulated over many years, was lifted. Tamara was quickly on the mend, and within a month she was walking with a cane again. She walked with a cane again within a month, and they discharged her home. Now the whole big family lived in the mansion of the Morozovs' mansion. Every day the relationship between Alexander's parents and Tamara grew warmer, and soon they could no longer imagine how they could live without each other. The women were happily fiddling around in the kitchen and surprised the owner of the house and the children with various treats. Alla conjured up her daughter-in-law's appearance and took her to the best beauty salon and boutiques. As a result, even her own son, Mikhail, barely recognized his mother. Tamara was once again the beautiful woman she had been in her youth. She was in her youth, the same long, mirrored and thick hair, and a fresh, well-groomed face, and the stylish and modern clothes and delicate nude manicures made her look 10 years younger. 10 years younger, for sure. Mikhail didn't look like a waif either. He went to a prestigious gymnasium, went to boxing and swimming, and simply adored, like Nadia, his grandfather. One night, Oleg got up for a drink of water, and suddenly he heard a scream from his sister-in-law's room. He was frightened that the woman was sick or ill and rushed in. He knocked softly. "Tamara, honey, are you all right? I heard you screaming." My daughter-in-law opened the door. She was pale and frightened, and wiped the cold sweat from her forehead with her handkerchief. Alla jumped out at the noise and asked sympathetically, "What's going on, Tamara? Are you not ill? You look so pale. You're shaking all over. Shall we call a doctor at home?" My daughter-in-law whispered softly, "Let's go to the kitchen. I'll tell you something." So as not to wake the children upstairs, Tamara drank some water from the decanter, calmed down a little, and began to tell, "You see, I've had the same nightmare many times, as if Alexander were alive, but his head was bloody and he was holding on, and begs to be saved, just like that. Beloved, take me away. I'm sick. Find me." And so it goes on and on. And now, the dream was almost the same, but Alexander said another word, or rather repeated it many times, sans. What could it be? I don't know what to do. Could he really be alive? Is he suffering somewhere and needs help? Or is it just my sick imagination? It's time to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. Alla objected. "Why are you so wrong? I personally believe in good dreams. I'm like that, just once in my life. But I dreamed. I was just Alexander was pregnant. I dreamed that I lost my son, looking for him in the baby carriage, and the crib, but he's still gone. And at the very end the dog brought him to me, right by the scruff of the neck. I remember being surprised. What kind of nonsense is this? What was that all about? Well, it took a whole year for that dream to come true. I had already forgotten about him 100 times. So my husband and I were visiting my cousins for their birthday and decided to walk back. It was nighttime, and Alexander was sitting in a sled. He must have fallen asleep on the way and fell out. I rushed over, and my son was gone. I was shouting, scolding my husband, crying, but the sledge was empty. Suddenly, we heard a dog barking. We went over there, and our baby is sleeping like an angel where he fell. and the dog noticed him and barked. So much for the dream of a prophetic dream. So everything can be. What if Alexander really survived? We did not conduct an expertise. There was no time for that. The shock, the grief, the pain. I couldn't even come to the identification. I fainted, and my husband only recognized his things. And now I think, and maybe it was not Alexander at all. Oleg became serious and thoughtful, then suddenly ran into the study and brought out the map, spread it right on the table, and began to think. The puzzled women just looked at each other and were silent. They didn't understand anything. Then the businessman poked his finger at some point on the map and exclaimed, "There it is. It's a village 100 kilometers away from the tragedy site where Alexander died. It's called Sands. Since it's situated in a sandy area, there's also a huge quarry. Tomorrow morning, Tamara, we'll go there with you. We'll check it just in case. What if it really is a dream? Even if there's a 1 in a billion chance my son survived, we have to check it out." Barely waiting for dawn, Oleg and Tamara took a thermos and sandwiches and set off. It was not a long trip. They arrived in the village towards evening. They saw old women sitting on a bench and decided to ask, "Good evening, good people. Can you give us a hint? We are looking for a man. Here is a picture. Have you by any chance seen him in the village? This is my son." The old ladies turned the photo around and answered, "It's the man whom our woodcutters found in the village a year ago with his head bashed in. He stayed with the healer, Vasiljevna, and that's how he got used to live. She took him out and left him with her. The poor guy lost his memory, can't even remember his name. We call him Peter. It's not good for a man without a name. The whole village dressed him to keep him warm." There, her small house at the edge, near the forest. Oleg could not believe what he had heard. Tamara sobbed. They immediately rushed to the witch doctor's hut. Knocked. On the porch came out a gaunt old woman and asked, "Hello, dear guests. Whom do you want? Do you need help, or is someone sick? I do not remember what village you come from." Oleg, shaking hands, showed the old woman. Photo. "This is my son, Alexander. We thought he died a year ago. We even buried him. Is he with you? Call him, please." The astonished grandmother shouted, "Peter, go. Your relatives have come to see you." Oh my gosh. I thought no one would even look for him. So much time has passed. I feel so sorry for the man. He's suffering. He can't remember anything, not even his name. When they brought him to me, I even crossed my eyes. I thought he would not survive. By God. His head was covered in blood and his skull was badly damaged. I had so much trouble with him. I nursed him for a long time. He was sick and vomiting. The poor guy, he must have been badly concussed. And then Alexander came out into the courtyard, in a jacket and valenki, with a long hairy beard. But the most important thing, he was alive and well. Tamara shrieked, couldn't stand it, and threw herself on his neck, forgetting of all grievances. "Alexander, my love, you're alive after all. What a joy." She sobbed and stroked his head, unable to control herself. The father also embraced his son. "Son, I do not believe my eyes. We thought you were dead. We buried you. We were grieving. Tamara had a dream that you were alive and here. So we came, even though we didn't believe it was possible. Now I believe in mysticism. How happy my mother will be. Why are you looking so strange? Don't you remember anything at all? Your name is Alexander Morozov, and I'm your father, Oleg. And this is your fiancée, Tamara. Well, Sonny, remember, you love Tamara so much, you must remember." The man suddenly grabbed his head and shook it, and sobbed at the top of his voice. God, it was like a flash, like lightning. I remembered. Daddy, I remember everything. Tamara, honey, but we broke up foolishly. I was jealous of you, you crazy fool. I'm so glad we found you. How did you find me in the first place? Baba Mania helped me out, thanks to her, but I've lost my memory. When I close my eyes, there's nothing, and that's it. If you only knew how terrible it is not to remember anything. I look in the mirror above the wash basin, some strange, unfamiliar. Looking at you, a man you don't know anything about. It's like you're not even a person. You're just a shadow, phantomus. That's how people often become homeless. If it wasn't for Baba Mania, where would you go if you knew nothing about yourself? If you don't know anything about yourself, no documents, nothing at all. Sometimes I'd get so bored, I'd howl. I thought, what am I going to do? Sit on an old lady's neck for the rest of my life? Of course, my fellow villagers pitied me, invited me to do part-time work. Someone to fix the fence, someone to mow the grass. But is that life? Oleg hugged the old woman. Thank you very much. Thank you for saving my son. I now owe you. What do you want to do for you? You say the lumberjacks found my son. Where do they live? I would like to personally thank them for my son. The grandmother was embarrassed. I don't need anything. I didn't do anything. I cured the boy, that's all. What kind of beast am I to chase a man without memory out into the street? I gave him a room, everything as it should be. We became friends. He fixed my porch and made hay for the winter for my goat and helped me in the garden. It's a shame to part with him. But I am glad that you found your son. I saw how my guest was pining and howling quietly at night and trying to remember at least something of himself. Goodbye, and goodbye to you all. Alexander hugged the old lady warmly goodbye, and they drove. And they drove home. On the way they stopped at the same woodcutters, Stepan and Nikita, who had saved Sasha and brought him to the healer. Oleg generously thanked them, giving them each a decent amount of money. He shook their hands. Guys, you're heroes. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. After all, you could have passed them by. And then, Alexander wouldn't have survived for sure. The men were embarrassed and replied, we were on the glade that day, on the clearing, and the dog Rizik came with us. He started barking and did not leave the ditch. So we went to see what was going on. When we saw your son, covered in blood, not moving, we thought he was dead. Then we dared a bit and came closer and he was breathing. So we put him on our shoulder and ran to Baba Mania. That's the whole story. It's good that you, Sashak, remembered everything and found your family. Good luck to you. All the way home, Alexander was turning his head, asking to drive slower, as if he was trying to remember something. Something else. He kept looking around, and then suddenly shouted at the corner, Daddy, stop right there, please. This is where it all happened. I remember. I was driving towards me, and suddenly I see a man lying on the ground. And the other man was waving his arms, saying, Stop, help me. So I foolishly stopped. I thought maybe he was too ill. It can happen. I just went up to them, bent over, and immediately something heavy hit me on the back of the head. Something heavy flew on my head. I was found in that ditch by the loggers after 24 hours and brought to the healer, Baba Mania. And then you know. God, I even remembered their faces. I can't believe it. One was in a cap with a mustache, about 40 years old, and the other was young. And the other one was a young, shifty guy, my build and height. I am surprised myself. Only yesterday I knew nothing about myself. But I saw you, and something clicked. As if someone turned on a toggle switch in my head. I remembered everything. Father, what about Nadia? What about Nadia, my daughter? You didn't give her back to the orphanage, did you? Does she live with you? She's probably forgotten me by now. It's a joke, not seeing her father for a year. And Mom, Oleg reassured his son, don't worry, Nadia is with us. We love her very much. We love her very much. She remembers you and misses you very much. We never dared to tell her that you died. My daughter thinks you are on a business trip and will be back soon. Tamara smiled. That's not all the news. You also have a son, your own son, Michael. He's 9 years old. When we broke up, I found out that I was pregnant. But I was stupid. I didn't tell you anything. I didn't call you. I was raising my son by myself. It was hard. I can't tell you how hard it was, and especially when I got sick. Michael often asked me where my father was, but what could I tell them? I lied that he was very far away and could not live with us. And recently Oleg found me, helped me. We made up with your mother, and now we all live together in the big house. Oh my God, Alexander, what a miracle that you've been found. Alexander was crying. He couldn't help himself. That's the news. I have a son too. I never dared to dream of it. I wanted children so much. Will Michael accept me? Wouldn't he be offended that my father had been gone for so many years and didn't visit him? Tamara, what young fools we were. Forgive me, my little swallow, for I was angry at the time, for believing. I believed the stories about you. I doubted your faithfulness. How many times have I regretted it? Even when I lost my memory, I dreamed of your image at night, and I kept thinking when I woke up, who was this beautiful stranger? Could she be my wife or my sister? Why do I dream of her every night? They had been waiting at home for a long time. Allah was exhausted. She thought of everything. When her beloved son finally entered his home, alive and well, she cried out, grabbed, and fainted like a stone. There was a commotion. Tamara brought smelling salts. Oleg splashed water on her, and Alexander fell on his knees beside her on the floor and whispered, Mommy, honey, what are you doing? It's me, Alexander, your son. You're awake at last. Phew, why are you so scary? Allah opened her eyes and began to stroke and feel her own blood to make sure that this was really happening. Then she suddenly cried, Alexander, my son, forgive me. It's all my fault. I messed up your life with Tamara. I've crippled your fate. How happy I am that you're alive. I was black with grief when we buried you. I blamed myself for coming to my senses late and there was nothing I could do about it. Oh, my darling, let me hold you tight. And I still think that this is a dream. The son hugged his mother tightly and comforted her. That's enough, Mommy, that's enough. Don't blame yourself. What was, is long gone. Let's not remember the bad things. The main thing is that Tamara is with you, and you've reconciled. Wait a minute, where are my kids? Where's my sweet bun? Nadia immediately came running out of the nursery and began to caress her father, kissing him, hugging him and crying. Daddy, Daddy, I missed you so much. Why didn't you come so long? I waited and waited for you, but you never came. Don't go away again, okay? Do you promise? Alexander kissed her chubby cheeks and inhaled the fragrance of her childhood and said, I missed you too, my darling. I won't go anywhere else. I'll be with my Nadia. And who am I tickling now? And Michael stood quietly aside, just watching everything, frowning. He looked at Sasha distrustfully, sideways. The man finally lowered his daughter to the floor and walked over to the boy. He started carefully. Hello, Sonny. How you've grown. What a grown-up already. Well, shall we get acquainted? I'm your father, Alexander. The boy didn't hold out his father's hand and said quietly, Where have you been? Why have you appeared only now? Do you know how my mother and I lived? How she was sick? If Grandpa Oleg hadn't found me, I don't know at all whether she would have survived. Why didn't he come to me and my mom before? I'm not Nadia, and I'm not 5 years old. You don't love us. If you did, you wouldn't have left us. And Michael pushed his father away in tears and ran to his room. There was a deadly silence in the hallway. Alexander clearly had not expected such a violent negative reaction. Alexander clearly did not expect such a violent negative reaction of the boy and was stunned, not knowing what to do. Then sadly stated, Well, right. And what did I want? For him to throw himself on my neck. He had never seen me before in his life. That's probably. Thinks that I purposely disappeared somewhere and did not go to see him. He probably won't forgive me. It's a shame, because I knew nothing about him. What to do? Tamara said quietly. Don't get upset, Alexander. Give him time to get used to it. It's too much stress for him. He's a smart, good boy, and he'll understand. I'll talk to him. Alla clutched her head. Oh, it's all my fault. I separated a father from his son for many years. Of course, Michael was offended. He thinks that Alexander has abandoned them, did not visit, and he did not know anything. Then Oleg decided to intervene. Tamara, may I speak to my grandson? I think he will hear me. He is not for his age adult and clever, all like me. Grandfather knocked on Michael's room. Grandchild, please open up. I need to talk to you. Armed Michael opened the door and waved his hand. Come in, Grandpa. You're always welcome. Oleg sighed and began carefully, picking up each word, explained to his grandson. You see, Michael, life is complicated. Adults often do stupid things and sometimes mean things, which they regret for years afterwards. You're an adult now, so I don't want to lie to you or make something up. Your father didn't communicate with you, not because he doesn't love you and your mother, but because he didn't know anything about you at all. About you at all, you know. He just found out today that he had his own son, and he cried with happiness. Whose fault is that? It's a tough question. Everybody's to blame, even me. Your parents loved each other very much. I was a witness to that. But then they had a big fight, and when your mother realized that you were already in the belly, she didn't say anything to your daddy because she resented him. That happens, but look on the bright side. Your mom is smart. She raised you. She loved you dearly. And now you have a father, a grandfather, a grandmother, a sister Nadia. Well, is that bad? Don't be angry with your father. It hurts him, and it hurts you too. Think about what I said. You are a very clever boy, just like me, so I think you will make up. The turmoil and confusion subsided a little, and the whole family were seated at the big table for supper, and the last to leave the room was Michael, who came up to his father and extended to him with a businesslike little hand to greet him, and said in a mature way, I'm glad to have you, Papa. Let's be friends. Alexander picked him up in his arms and almost cried from happiness. Then he answered, Sorry me, Mishka, that I wasn't there, but I'll make it up to you. And now we'll always be together. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Tamara even cried. At last all her cherished dreams came true. She and Alexander and her son were living together. She had fallen in love with Nadia a long time ago and called her daughter and princess. At last the children went to bed in their rooms after the games, and Alexander and Tamara went to their bedroom too, and finally got some privacy. After so many years of separation, Alexander, seeing Tamara, so beautiful and desirable in a transparent negligee, pounced on like a hungry wolf. The woman, too, longed for her lover, and they did not sleep a wink until dawn, crying, confessing their love to each other, and holding each other tightly in each other's arms, as if they feared that all this happiness might evaporate. Alexander whispered, as he had done then, in his youth, You are my Serena Tamara. You're my beauty. How I've missed you. You're just like before, tender, sensitive, passionate, and my favorite girl. Forgive me, my darling, for not fighting for my love then. Destiny has punished me severely for it. I'm not going to let you go anywhere. Tamara was melting from these sincere words. Finally, justice prevailed, and they were together again, two loving hearts. She enjoyed the moment, listening to the measured breathing of her beloved, and could not believe the reality of what was happening. Oleg went to the prosecutor's office. Alexander's case was reopened. He drew up a sketch of the bandits who had attacked him. Incredibly, but managed to find one of them, and the other. As it turned out, he burned up in the car, failing to keep control, and he was mistaken for Alexander. The body was so charred that it was impossible to recognize anything there. The bandit told the story. They'd done this kind of scheme more than once. It was called baiting. One would lie down on the roadway, and the other would draw to attract attention. When the driver came out to help, and not realizing it was a setup, they'd hit him over the head and into a ditch. And the car was stolen, the plates changed, and resold. Only this time it all went wrong. On the way, the buddies got into a fight over the stolen money, and one of them threw the other one right out of the car and crashed himself. The fact that Alexander survived this trauma is nothing short of a miracle. Alexander survived his trauma, but it was a miracle thanks to Baba Manya's healer. Alexander and Oleg helped her in gratitude and repaired the house, rebuilt the bathhouse, and even set up a modern office for receiving visitors. The old woman had never dreamed of such a gift, and she was very happy to receive it. Tamara decided to do charity work, remembering how she herself had been on the verge of death and couldn't get help anywhere. She set up a charitable foundation and called it Do Goodness. Here they helped all the underprivileged families in difficult situations, found clinics, held auctions and exhibitions. All the proceeds went to pay for the treatment of these people. That very memorable book in a binder was now kept, like a talisman, prominently displayed in their bedroom. After all, it was the book that had helped family members unite the whole family after many years. Allah was proud of her daughter-in-law and did not. They became very close during this time. They had long heart-to-heart talks, cooked together, and worried for their men, who were still absorbed in the oil business. Nadia went to first grade, and proud and important Mikhail took her everywhere and patronized her, threatening all the boys. If you hurt your sister, I'll twist her head off. Got it? Finally, the troubles and misfortunes receded, and an idyll was established in the Morozov family. The Morozovs' family was at peace. Alexander decided to finish what he had failed to do many years before and finally proposed to Tamara, on his knee and with a ring in his hand. The woman burst into tears, for it had once been her most cherished dream. What girl does not dream in her youth of a wedding and a white dress? Probably there is no such. But when Alexander now, many years later, finally decided to arrange a lavish wedding, Tamara was suddenly embarrassed. Maybe we shouldn't. We're not 18 anymore. You and I have 2 children. You've already been married. How's it going to look? Maybe we should just get married quietly, that's all. Why all the pomp and circumstance? The main thing is that we're together. But the man answered firmly, No, my dear. You can't get out of the wedding. I'm a wealthy man, and I can afford to celebrate. I can afford to celebrate it in style. After all, we only live once. I want everyone in the world to know that I'm marrying the best to the best woman in the world. And finally, you'll be Tamara Morozova. There was a lot of hustle and bustle ahead, and finally that long-awaited day had finally arrived. Happy Tamara looked at herself in the mirror and could not believe the reality of what was happening. Today she was getting married to Alexander, just as she had always dreamed. And no matter that on the way to this had to go through a lot of trials and more than one test of strength, if 2 hearts are truly in love, they will still, sooner or later, they will find each other and be together. Oleg and Alla were sitting at a celebratory. They were sitting at a table in an expensive restaurant and watched in amazement as the newlyweds danced the wedding waltz. Alexander gently embraced and twirled his beloved as if she were a weightless butterfly. Tamara was unusually beautiful in her lush, snow-white dress with rhinestones, and her hair with a diadem made her look even more like a princess from a fairy tale. Oleg snuggled up to his wife and suddenly said dreamily, how wonderful dancing. Just a look, cooing as doves, and we shake up the old days. Let's show young people how to dance the waltz. My dear. Everyone clapped and admired the way Alexander's parents danced. Alexander's parents at their age, as if they had a second wind. One of the guests was the first to shout, "And now for all Gorko." Everyone else joined in, and the newlyweds kissed passionately. Kissing passionately, forgetting about everything. The holiday was a success, and the whole family Morozov, for a long time, still remembered the most interesting moments and looked through the pictures. Now in the evenings, the family gathered around the fireplace and had fun sharing impressions of the day and entertaining the children. Tamara turned out to be a great wife and mother, and the most beloved daughter-in-law, and that's how it is.